Hi, I'm Dave Monty and welcome to my video series, Everything Villages. Today we are doing part 2 of my series, Is the Villages Collapsing? We're going to cover why the Villages continues to build, and we're going to talk about how local economies as well as retirement communities mature. So stay tuned. As always, before we get started, if you like this video, please hit like. If you like my channel, please subscribe to it. Both those actions help these videos reach more people, and I greatly appreciate it. Also, if you like a copy of my free 42-page guide, Buying and Selling a Home in the Villages, you can email me right here at davemontysales@gmail.com. I also have a nifty cost of living calculator as well as budgeting tool that you can also email me right here for that copy. Like I said in the introduction, this is part 2 of Is the Villages Collapsing? We're going to talk about why the Villages continues to build even though it's getting kind of crowded. We are going to discuss how retirement communities mature and how local municipalities mature over time. Most of the people watching this video are probably from out of town still wanting to learn the Villages, but there has been some massive changes over the last 5, 6, 7 years here. The Villages continues to build. The Villages continues to grow. They continue to add town squares and golf courses and thousands of houses. At the same time, with that growth, it brings in new jobs. And then you have to have housing for the people who are coming in for the service and construction jobs. So the Villages is growing. The local economies like Wildwood and Oxford continue to grow. This is putting a lot of stress on the infrastructure, from the roads to restaurants and to the town squares. Everything's becoming very crowded. Okay? So I get this question a lot. Why does the Villages keep building? The answer is pretty simple. They have to. And what do I mean by that? Well, the Villages brings jobs into the community. Okay? They've created new construction jobs. They've created service jobs, restaurant jobs, renovation jobs, landscaping, real estate agents, lawyers, etc. Okay, so the growth of the Villages drives the economy here. Okay? This is completely different than any other economy. Every other economy, the housing market supports the growth of the area. Here, the housing market is the growth of the area. So the Villages at this point has to continue to grow. To reiterate, the expansion matters. They're adding construction jobs, service jobs, healthcare, retail. You can't continue to build. So when can the Villages actually stop building? Well, currently, new construction jobs are a big chunk of the local economy. Now, this is not to scale, it's just for illustration purposes. Okay, so new construction is a big chunk. When the Villages continues to grow, they're not increasing the number of houses they're building at any one time. So in other words, they are going to build 300 houses this month, as an example. They're going to build another 300 next month and the month after that. Okay, so the new construction jobs are pretty stable, and they're probably not growing those numbers of jobs at this point. They're probably pretty fixed. Okay? However, as the area continues to grow and you start adding in the remodelers, the landscapers, healthcare, retail jobs, service jobs, again, real estate agents, lawyers, doctors, etc., okay, the local economy depends less and less on the new construction. But currently, the new construction is a very important part of the local economy. So the Villages has to continue to build at least for another 5, 7, 10 years. So the next question becomes, can a service economy actually support an entire community? And the answer is yes, under the right circumstances, which the Villages has the correct circumstances. When you think of a nice area, you think of an area that has high-end jobs, big incomes, and nicer homes, meaning nicer amenities in the area as well. Okay? In an area where it's mainly service driven jobs. The jobs don't pay as well and the areas aren't quite as nice. The reason why the areas aren't as nice is because that's all the income. Okay? So while we're in the villages and we are losing the income coming from high-paying jobs, we have money coming in from the retirees, from their pensions, from withdrawing from their retirement accounts, annuities, etc. So there is plenty of money in the area to support this economy. Okay, so that's never going to be an issue here. There are two types of growth in a community. One's called radial growth and one's called linear growth. The villages is linear growth. Radial growth just means that the growth of an area grows from the center out. You can think of like most cities. I'll use Raleigh, North Carolina as an example. That's where I moved from. Okay, you have your town center. The area is encased by a belt line, a road that goes all the way around the downtown of Raleigh. If you're inside that belt line, the prices are through the roof. Okay. You go outside, there's another belt line. Now, if you're inside that second belt line, the price of your home is pretty stable and pretty strong. As you move out, the homes get less and less expensive because you're getting further and further away from the points of interest. Now, what happens as this entire thing ages out? So that center didn't start off being ultra expensive. It started off as the place to live in the area. Okay? Then the place gets older. It aged out. The homes became less expensive. Then people moved in with investment money to gentrify the area. So they're updating their old 1950s ranch homes, okay, and putting multi-million-dollar homes on those lots because those lots are very valuable. So in these areas where there's value, centralized location, there's a huge draw to that specific area, those areas tend to go through a refresh cycle. It's originally built, it goes through its heyday, it maintains its pricing, and then it starts to age and continues to age and becomes a less expensive area. Then over here, people will say, hey, those lots are valuable, they're so close, it's a great destination, so let's take that house, tear it down, and put a really nice house in the area. That does happen a little bit in the villages, but nearly not as much as you would in these gentrification areas. Okay, so pricing increases and goes. Now, I just said pricing and I didn't really mean to. So take a look at this graph. This is the relative health of a specific area in a community. This is not the pricing. So many things affect pricing, like inflation over time, geopolitical issues. You're going to have interest rates, which are going to affect the market. So the market continues to fluctuate. It does tend to go up over time. So if I were to actually graph pricing without taking anything into effect other than time, then you're looking pretty close to something like this. Okay, so this is still the relative health, but the pricing follows the relative health of those areas. Okay. Again, this is centralized locations and kind of a refresh cycle. Okay. All right. Now let's take a look at linear growth. This is the pattern that we see in the villages. Okay. They started off building here They started off building here in Orange Blossom, then moved over to Spanish Springs, and then moved up north, and then continued to build south. So what happens when you continue to build south like this is that the center of the community is never fixed. It continues to move south. The points of interest, like the town squares, still are a draw for people, but it's not a big enough draw to offset the effect of the linear growth. Okay, so what happens with linear growth is that homes in the older sections will typically remain older because you don't have investors who want to invest in those locations. Okay, so the relative health in a linear growth model looks something like this. It has its heyday, It maintains its pricing for a while. Again, I use the word pricing and I'm meaning to say relative health of the market. Okay, and then the health of the market starts to decline as the homes age out, as the streets age out. And then what ends up happening is it does arrive at a lower level of pricing, but this area becomes stable and this becomes the more affordable areas within the villages. So I would expect this to happen in most of the areas in the village. Again, this is the relative health. If we were to graph pricing, it would look something like this. So yes, you bought here. Over time, the home pricing value went up, and then it did start to come down. But in general, over time, homes appreciate in value. Right? So just wanted to show you what happens in a linear growth. Right? Now, we live in a retirement community. Okay? Retirement communities also have a growth pattern. Okay? It's an older population. There's less sweat equity, less renovation. Homes age faster. The homes tend to age faster not because people are willfully destroying homes, but as people age, they lack the capacity to take care of homes. As an example, if you go down some streets way up north right now, a lot of the aging retirees got sick of dealing with landscaping and ripped out most of their landscaping. And you go down some streets and there's almost no landscaping there. Okay, so as an example. So what it does is it makes that area look a little bit more tired. Going back to the radial growth model, okay, and even in retirement communities that might have one central town square, okay, you still might not get this refresh cycle. And the reason is because we are dealing with an older crowd. This requires, down in this area, sweat equity. It requires know-how. It requires knowing the vendors here. So often, sweat equity is often not dumped back into retirement communities, okay, because people want to unpack and play here. They don't want to come in and renovate homes. So the retiree behavior health of the market looks almost identical to a linear graph model. Okay? So if you add linear growth in retiree behavior, this health of relative areas becomes very ingrained in stone. Expect this to happen regardless of where you are. And again, pricing will go up. I'm just talking about relative health of the area versus other areas in the villages. Okay? So what affects how long this is? Again, we're talking decades. Often homes that are nicer, homes with a view, nicer streets, tend to hold their value longer. They tend to be more money. People can afford to do more. So, and we are seeing that in the villages. The higher end of the market is maintaining their values. The lower end is coming down when you start getting into the older sections. Okay, so in the older sections, the nicer homes are maintaining values. The smaller homes are not at this point. All right. This is not an anomaly. This has to do with retirement communities. It has nothing to do with the health of the villages or whether it's getting crowded or whether people like it here or not. That is just how the health of a market matures with retirees and matures with linear growth. Okay? And we see this all over the place. It doesn't matter if you're in Arizona with Sun City, California, South Carolina, down near Hilton Head. All of these have gone through this maturity cycle. The question is, will demand stay strong? In my next video, we're going to talk about the demand side of it. And there's a little bit of risk there, so please look out for that video. Will jobs keep growing in the area? If the villages continues to build, then the jobs will continue to grow in the area. Will expansion continue? Again, the expansion has to continue here in the villages because so many jobs depend on it. The health of the area is very good. The health of the villages is good. However, individual areas within the villages are at different points in that maturity cycle. So a little bit of summary here. The goal wasn't to scare people with this particular video. It was to show you that the villages needs to continue to build in order to continue to beef up the local economy. Eventually, they will be able to stop building once this area is a little bit more mature. Now, as the area matures, you will see that linear growth pattern, meaning areas will increase in value and depending on how nice the area is, will maintain value for a number of years. And again, we're probably talking, 10, 20, even 30 years in some of these locations. But eventually those homes will age out and start coming down in price. Once those homes reach that stable level of pricing, those homes will stay at that pricing. And again, I'm only talking about relative pricing. I'm not talking about inflation. We're not talking about things that hit the economy again. If you'd like a copy of my free 42-page guide, Buying and Selling a Home in the Villages, you can email me right here. Or you can get a copy of my nifty cost of living calculator / budgeting tool, again, right at davemontysales@gmail.com. Well, I hope you found the video informative. I hope to see you around the Villages. Take care.